Welcome to The Writer's Dream, where authors can talk about how they write their books, how they publish their books, and how they market their books. You can find us on YouTube. You'll have to actually search my name, Linda Maria Frank. I am the author of Annie Tillery Mysteries. Click on my picture, and about 150 videos will come up. If you are interested in reading or writing, we have some wonderful books. We have some wonderful local Long Island authors. And we also have some wonderful advice about writing, publishing, and marketing. We also have a Facebook page. If you wish to be on the show or you are interested in asking a question, please address that through our Facebook page, which is called The Writer's Dream. We are also aired here at LTVEH. Just go on their website and look for video on demand, look for The Writer's Dream, and you will find us. So today's guest is Angela Reich, and Angela Reich is the author of Shipwreck of Hopes. And Angela and I have something in common, which we just found out right before she came on the show, and that was that both of us were, she is now, and I was in the past, a docent at the Lighthouse on Fire Island. And the thing that we have in common besides that is that it is a place of inspiration and mystery. So, Angela is also a PhD in literature, which really speaks to her writing and how she came about writing this wonderful book. So tell us about your book, Angela.
Well, first, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. So Shipwreck of Hopes contains all of the human drama, the struggles, the successes, the disasters of our lives, and the hope that we have to hold in our hearts. The action sweeps the reader from the lonely Long Island shores across the Atlantic to war-torn Europe, and then back again on the ill-fated ship, the Elizabeth.
So, and it's 19th century, yes?
It's 1848, 1850. Mm-hmm. So the novel operates on several different levels. It operates on the emotional and psychological journey of the two main characters and their struggles as they have to reconcile their past with the landscapes, the political and social landscapes of the day, of the time period you just mentioned. So therefore, the reader finds himself on the streets of bloody Rome during the Italian Revolution of 1848. That was the political landscape of the time in Europe. The reader finds himself at the Fire Island Lighthouse during the social struggles we were having in this country to try to find money from Congress for so many different things, and in this case for a safety system for the shores of Long Island, which leads to New York Harbor. And then on the social level of the brave and so tough individuals who chose to live on a barrier island at that time. Mm-hmm. So all of these different operational levels are happening at the same time. So what happens ultimately is that all of this human drama comes together in a collision, literally, of the ship, the Elizabeth, during a wild storm that hits the shore on the deserted barrier island of Fire Island.
I see. And what is the genre of this book?
This is an historical fiction.
Okay. And why did you choose historical fiction?
Because personally, I don't like to read anything unless I'm learning something.
I agree.
Our time is
that's
right.
The other thing we have.
And our time is precious. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's an honor if you read my book. It's an honor because you're allowing me into your space. So I owe you truth and verity in action, in human drama, and in historical fact. So to me, if I'm going to spend all the time and energy to write, I want to write something that's worth your while to read.
Oh, I agree wholly. I tried to put history and science in all of my books because I do believe that that's one of the things that writers can do, besides entertaining.
Yes.
besides entertaining.
And that's the importance, and that's part of the learning that I did on my journey to get the PhD. We are a storytelling people. Mm-hmm. This is how we negotiate our world and ourselves. So it is the way the human creature operates. So if you think of the earliest stories, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Aeneid, these are the ways that those cultures pass their stories on to the next generations. And each of those main characters dealt with their own personal ghosts and troubles within their political environments.
Civilizations are defined by their stories.
No question. And the other thing I learned in the research is the more things change, the more they stay the same.
One of my favorite authors is Charles Dickens. Mm-hmm. And the reason why he's still my favorite author, or one of my favorites, is because all of the social issues that he brought to light in his novels still exist today.
Right.
And the human dramas surrounding them are exactly the
same.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fabulous. Actually,
point.
it's. I love the knowledge of that.
Yeah,
I love the feeling of that.
The continuity of the human condition.
No question.
We never get any better, do we? I'm sorry.
Well, I don't want to go there, but I think that we do.
Okay, hope.
See, again, hope.
Okay. So give us some insight into your research, because you are a researcher, and a novel like this requires a great deal of research, and I'm sure you had some thrilling experiences, as I did doing my research.
Yes, absolutely. So as a docent at the Fire Island Light, or at any place where you're a docent, you have to do your research and learn the history. And so I set about doing that, and that's where I found the story of the wreck of the Elizabeth. So a retired English teacher, a researcher, a lover of the beach and of the lighthouse and maritime history, it all came together in that one story. Mm-hmm. Who was aboard this ship but Margaret Fuller, a very famous American writer who was born in Boston and who was in Europe at the time and was aboard the ship Elizabeth when the ship hit the shore. So it turned on all of my hot spots: a writer, the beach, the lighthouse, and the history. So now I have all of these many historical avenues to travel down. Just reading about Margaret Fuller was a study in itself.
She's a real person.
Yeah, absolutely. She was very important in her day. Her father was Timothy Fuller. He was a Massachusetts congressman at the time, and he tutored her his Harvard education at a time when women, their education was to sew and to sing and to be pleasant. Here's a young woman with all of the classical education that there was. So she was an anomaly. She had no peers. But her friends were Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, the Transcendentalist group. She was a wonder, and I could go on forever with her because I have such admiration for her. But that was a whole research area. The other research area is the maritime history. We did not have a safe coast at the time when this country was growing, and all of Europe was heading for New York Harbor. So Long Island beaches are just littered with shipwrecks. So that was another whole study. The people, there was a lot of publicity on this wreck. Even though there were so many, this wreck got a lot of publicity because somebody famous was on the boat. So
like
it's just like
Titanic.
now, right? If something happens to you and me, nobody cares, but if you're famous, it's all over Twitter and everything. So there were many, many months of front page coverage on this shipwreck, which as a researcher was really good for me because I got a lot of names of people who were involved. And people like to talk about one another, so the locals who were involved in the aftermath of the wreck, who were the only people who were there for days, I was able to find who they were. I was able to do the research. I found their graves on Long Island. I found their stories. I found the census of the time and to see who was who and who went where. So it was great. All these different research areas, which is why it took me 5 years of research to do the book. But can I tell you like one really cool research story?
I hope so.
So I went to I have many of them, but I went to
Oh,
Harvard.
feel free.
I went to Harvard University to read the Fuller family papers and I made a research appointment. I went up there and I was able to hold in my hand a diary that survived the wreck. It was all waterlogged and messed, but it was Margaret Fuller's writing. I was able to find her letters.
Did she survive? Of course she
Oh,
did.
I'm not doing any spoilers today.
Oh, okay.
So I have to read the book.
Okay.
So
I will. I did.
anyway, I was able to find and hold and handle original documentation, which is the way to go in terms of research, because otherwise you're dealing with hearsay. Anyway, I did what I could do there. I came home. 2 weeks later, I got an email from the librarian at Harvard who said to me, we just made an acquisition that I think would be useful for you in your research. So she notified me that they acquired Henry David Thoreau's notes. Now, Henry David Thoreau was her friend. After the wreck, he came down to investigate. He spent 5 days on Fire Island, interviewing all the survivors and writing notes. Now, if you're a Margaret Fuller scholar, you'll know that in every biography, his report is included. It's well known. But what Harvard acquired was not his report, but the notes he used to make the report that had been hidden and buried for all these years.
Something like this, right?
Worse. In fact, I could show you. May
Please.
I? Imagine reading this handwriting.
Just, that's it. Tilt it a little this way. That's it. There you go.
Look at this mess, right? But the opening lines say, I am writing this at the house of Smith Oaks within 1 mile of the wreck. So here now I have his notes of the interviews that he took of all of the survivors, which helped me to confirm my characterizations of those local people.
Yeah, you know, I think that people who, I think people can really appreciate this. Readers can really appreciate the fact that in your book, what you try very hard to do is to create the mood, to create some sense of the characters. And when you're doing your research, to be able to go to some place that enables you to go into that zone, so to speak, really helps you to lend authenticity to your writing. And it's so important to be able to do that.
It is. It actually means, it meant everything to me, because I can tell you that handling the Margaret Fuller documents, handling them just gives you a vibe. And being in the space itself. So we are Long Islanders, very fortunately, so I'm at these beaches. Can I read my first?
Certainly. I wish you...
Now that we're on the topic, because I try to establish the vibe of the beach, if you're a beachgoer.
I'll let you know if it's
This is what I
authentic.
feel when I go. This is where my observation, but I'm not going to read a lot, but it seems
I go to visit
pertinent.
the deer once a week. I do.
There are so many of them.
They're so beautiful.
Hannah Oakes stood alone atop the highest dune. The sun shone bright on her tan skin as the wind swept back her long blonde hair let loose. Arms toned from toil hung idle, legs stood strong and apart, feet firmly set, bare, calloused upon a new growth of sparse, wild grass. Her cotton frock whipped backward and between her legs, revealing her youthful shape. Here she faced the mighty sea, its jagged surface gleaming like glass in the sun. She remembered a life that seemed so long ago, distant, yet still visceral. An impenetrable shadow remained, though time blurs the edges of memory. This about a young girl unsuspecting, taken by surprise and helpless. So despite the passing of the years and across the miles, haunting memory dreams would not release Hannah. They kept her prisoner, chained, startled awake many a time from deep slumber by a flash of awareness. Then she'd know it again all at once, that once upon another time there was a child who died, who Hannah buried deep and forever. But here, atop this dune, she thought, I am away from that place. This island keeps me captive. This island keeps me safe.
So is Hannah also a real person, Hannah Oakes?
Yeah, well, every character in the book is a real person.
Okay.
Hannah is the only one I took liberties with. It's because every other person in the book had enough history attached to them and enough stories in the newspapers or whatever attached to them for me to have dictated to me their personalities. Hannah is an actual person. I saw her name on the census. I knew her age, when she lived, and the fact that she was Smith Oakes' wife. However, I never saw another written word about her. There was nothing to tell me about her personality. So I took liberties with that character because she is the connection character among all of these disparate fields. So I had to make up her childhood and her background and her human drama because it's that connects all of the disparate pieces.
Okay. So we've covered character, we've covered setting. What about plot? Would you like to say something about plot?
It was really tough because I changed my mind a few times. I'm doing the research of Margaret Fuller, who ends up in Europe and involved in the Italian Revolution of 1848. There's another whole research chapter opened. What was going on over there? Who were the people involved? She was involved. Why was she involved? Who was she involved with? And that's a story in itself. Then I have the whole thing going on the beach with the lighthouse. And so how did I put this plot together? I was writing before I even knew the answer. And it occurred to me during the writing how to make the connection, the human connection. Because there's a physical connection, the ship hits the shore. Mm-hmm. But how do we make a novel and a story out of it? That was the puzzle to me. And I had to kind of just go on faith that I was going to find the way to knit it all together.
Okay.
So that's not a real answer, but it is the only and real answer.
No, because you don't want to give away the end of the book, but I would like you to read your review.
Oh, okay. I had a very nice review in the Fire Island News.
And you have a story about how you got into the Fire Island News, yes?
I do. Do you want me to talk about that?
Sure.
So here I am, a self-published author, and this is my first trip through this story, and I don't know what I'm doing, so I had to teach myself everything I could by reading online and all.
Welcome to the club.
Right. That's the only way to go. But I found that the key for me is an Instagram account. Instagram is fabulous. It's quick, it's easy. It connects you on a very easy level with so many different audiences. I'm on it every day. I don't spend all day on it. I give it a good half hour over my morning coffee, and I see who I can connect with and how I can, and I post a lot of things. Angela Reich Official, please go look me up and give me a like. So through Instagram, I was connected to, they contacted me, the Fire Island Tide, the Fire Island News, the List magazine, all these great local papers who are the go-to papers for what's good on Long Island and what's good on Fire Island. And that's how they found me. Mm-hmm. And I got wonderful articles in each of those magazines. So I have a review, a full book review.
And that's from Rita Plush, yes?
Rita Plush
Because Rita's been on the
this.
show.
Oh, thank you, Rita. It was a fabulous review.
Yeah,
and
she
I
does a
really
really
appreciate
nice
it.
review,
Yeah.
because she did one for me as well.
And it's lengthy, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll just read like the first and last paragraph.
Okay.
Author, educator, and researcher Angela Reich combines her love of history and the sea to bring readers the imagined Hannah Oakes of Fire Island and Margaret Fuller, prominent 19th century writer, into a work of historical fiction. Setting her story against the isolated beaches of Fire Island and by turns the streets of Rome, the author serves up a compelling tale of two very different women on opposite sides of the Atlantic who come together in a surprising and poignant way. She goes on to talk about the particulars, and I'm just going to go with the ending paragraph. A student of both history and human nature, Reich notably cites the townsmen who quickly profit from the wreck. She gives a little picture of the profiteering from the wreck. The local privateers are charged later on, its cargo of finery sold openly, brazenly on the streets. The imagery is rich as housewives appear in silks fit for aristocrats. A man never seen wearing one hat brags a pile of 6 upon his head. No spoilers here. I won't tell how it happens, but Hannah and Margaret's lives connect in the final chapters, as does the showdown between Hannah and Oakes. Shipwreck of Hopes is a story that ties a revolution, a shipwreck, Long Island, and Italy, a nasty villain, and 2 women who have seemingly nothing in common into a well thought out and engagingly written first novel.
Excellent.
It's very lovely. Thank you,
Yes.
Rita Plush, and thank you, Fire Island News, and these other wonderful publications who helped to get me out, get the word out there.
Okay, so now let's talk about writing, publishing, and marketing. Now, when did you know you were going to write a book? I pretty much have an idea of your journey, but when was that moment that you said, I'm going to write a book?
I was about 6 years old, and I was lying on my bed in the summertime.
It took you a long time to get
I know. Reading Misty, you remember the Misty stories, the horse stories? I was really hooked on horses.
No, I was already 40 years old. Sorry.
But it really started when I was just a little kid. My mom was an avid reader. She just read and read and read. And I was a member of a very hectic and crazy household. But I remember my mom would sit down in the middle of the afternoon with a cup of coffee and a book. And she had these crazy reading glasses that were like bright green, tortoise shell. And she would have them on the end of her nose, and she'd be in the kitchen at the kitchen table, and I would be in the doorway peering at her going, she's so calm. She's so focused. And what are those green things on her face? And she just read and read and read and read, and that was an escape and a place to go to be your whole self. And I learned that from watching her. And then as a little kid, she would read to me like some of the things that she was reading, the O. Henry stories, The Last Leaf. She would read those stories to me. And then I developed my own love of reading. And then when I was reading on that day in Brooklyn on my bed, I said, how do all these words get into the right order so that I think I'm riding a horse down the beach? It was just like a miracle to me. So there was a long journey, a lot of stories I can tell you, which I can't tell you now, but we'll have to meet at the corner bar over martinis and I'll tell you the whole thing, but not right now. And it did take me a long time because life has twists and turns to it. But it was instilled in me, I guess, is the short answer.
Yeah.
By my primary influencer, who was my mom.
Yeah, I often just think of myself not so much as a writer, but as a storyteller. And then it makes it easy for me because then I'm just telling a story. I don't have to think about writing.
Yeah, it's
so
intimidating.
Anything new coming up?
I have a sequel that I'm working on right now. It's going to pick up right where Shipwreck of Hopes leaves off because there's a lot of very interesting after story.
Well, you have so much research that why waste it?
Yeah,
right?
but I'm still I'm researching now yet again because the story goes forward from there and there are more interesting Long Island families and events that take place that I have to make sure I have just right. The thing is, when you're writing the second book, you're still publicizing the first book, so the writing time is very precious now.
Yes, I'm finding that myself. I'm finding it. I have 6 books, and I'm just overwhelmed by what has to be done. How did you publish? Did you self-publish?
I did.
Yeah, and you find out that you have to do everything yourself.
Everything.
And so it's just overwhelming. But I was also told that people who are not famous and get a traditional publisher, they have to do it all themselves.
Yeah.
Also.
I mean, I have friends who did go through traditional publishing, and they are still very busy with the publicity and personal appearances. The thing about self-publishing, it's a lot of work, and more than I ever bargained for, but you're in control of your project all the way.
That's right.
Nobody's telling you what to do, and I'm not young anymore. I don't like people telling me what to do anymore.
Well, yeah.
So it's good to be in control of your project and decide where you're going and when, and I like it. I'm happy I made the decision.
Supposedly there are 5 publishing houses left, and when I decided to publish my first book, I said to myself, I'm too old to wait to be discovered.
I hear you.
I don't want to be like, I don't know, Van Gogh and be dead by the time
Exactly.
this book comes out.
Right.
So that figured into it as well. So advice for somebody who comes to you and says, you know, I have an idea, I want to write a book. Any advice?
I found this as a teacher, people tend to be intimidated by the notion of it, and it's all in their head, and they're editing before they write the thing. You can't edit something that's not written. So just write, and then you go back, and the actual writing occurs in the editing process. But if you don't take that first step of committing some pages, there's nothing to edit. There's no journey to start on. So do not just talk about it, think about it, but start writing. Because it all changes anyway. As you shape it, it becomes the thing that happens in the process of the writing.
Okay, that's good advice. I'm an outliner, so and I have to have a structure before I start writing. But I'm changing a little bit now because the things I've been writing now are kind of happening by themselves. So it's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And good luck with the new project. I can't wait. And we'll have to talk about book reviews because book reviews are very important. So thanks, Angela.
Thank you so much.